Yeah, sure. So this story we started working on over a year ago. People might remember Miriam Abdelrab. She was kidnapped and killed on her way home from work. She was a bartender, and while she was at the gas station, this guy saw her and followed her home from work, kidnapped her, and murdered her. And they found her body late that or early that next morning. So what happened was after that story came out, like we do a lot of times as investigators, we dig into the suspect to see did they have a past or a criminal record, a history of mental illness, and we found all of those things. So the alleged killer is DeMarcus Brinkley, and we found that he had been convicted of a rape and accused of another rape, both very young children, a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. He had went before a judge. Prosecutors had asked that he stay in prison for something like 20 to 30 years. That sentence got reduced, and then he was able to get out early. He only ended up serving, I think, somewhere like 8 to 10 years of that sentence. Then when he got out, he never received an electronic ankle monitor because he never got leveled. So what does getting leveled mean? Well, you might hear with sex offenders level 1, level 2, level 3. In Georgia, or our Sex Offender Registration Review Board determines the leveling of these people, but they have a large backlog. So DeMarcus Brinkley gets out of prison, never gets leveled, and then he goes on to kill Miriam Abdelrab. So we found all of this, after the horrific, tragic crime, and we shared this with the family. And I want to mention, too, this family is incredible. They, and friends, the family and friends of Miriam are just next level. They've been doing so much advocacy, and they were calling for Miriam's Law before they even had a sponsor. So back when I talked to them over a year ago, we're going to show you this piece so you could see what we found, and you'll hear a little bit from them. But you'll see in this story they were talking about Miriam's Law, and I want you guys to take a look at this, and then we'll kind of discuss what happened afterwards. So let's take a look. Miriam Abdelrab was always creating.
She loved drawing. She was an amazing artist.
Today, those sketches and this community mural memorializing her life is all her baby brother Ollie has left.
She probably didn't know it while she was here, but I definitely looked up to her.
After her late-night bartending shift, Miriam stopped at a gas station. Police told Miriam's family it appeared she was spotted there randomly and followed. Then, surveillance video captures the moments she gets to her boyfriend's house. Seconds later, another car pulls up. That's when a man approaches Miriam and forces her into his car, all while Miriam's boyfriend watches helplessly.
Oh my God, bro, I just watched her get kidnapped from in front of my house.
She had a gun pointed to her?
Yes, I watched it all through my window in my front yard. He had a gun to her, and he forced her into a car.
4 hours after that panicked 911 call, Miriam was found dead with multiple gunshot wounds. In the weeks that followed, her family was overcome with grief. Then as more details came out, the trauma intensified.
I kind of broke down. I fell down to my knees. What happened to my sister was preventable.
CBS 46 Investigates dug into DeMarcus Brinkley's history and uncovered a schizophrenia diagnosis and a record of violent crimes. According to Fulton County Court documents, Brinkley was accused of raping a 7-year-old girl in 2012. Then in 2013, he was found on top of a naked 6-year-old girl. In 2015, he pled guilty to child molestation, attempted rape, and cruelty to children. The state recommended he serve 15 years in prison, followed by 15 years on probation. Instead, Brinkley was sentenced to 15 years total, 7 in prison, followed by 8 on probation. He'd also have to register as a sex offender. But when Brinkley was released in 2020, that's when we found that he never received a risk level assessment. That's when offenders are designated Tier 1, 2, or 3, depending on their risk level for sexual reoffense.
If you go on the Sex Offender Registry website, it says not leveled on his name still.
He's right. We took these findings to the executive director of the Georgia Sex Offender Registration Review Board, who blamed a backlog for offenders not getting leveled, which she says is, quote, due to understaffing and a lack of funds. Unlike some states where sex offenders are leveled on the day of their sentencing, Georgia levels sex offenders when they are released from prison.
To this day, our communities are at risk.
And that's where the family says Miriam's Law comes into the picture. By 1, requiring sex offenders who have not received a risk level assessment to be fitted with an ankle monitor. Once they are leveled, Tier 3 offenders would be required to wear the monitor for the duration of their sentence, while Tier 1 and Tier 2 offenders could have them removed. And 2, requiring sex offenders to carry an ID card with a specific symbol that is recognizable to law enforcement.
There might be more DeMarcus Brinkleys out there, and we don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Should Miriam's Law move forward, it's likely that it will face some legal challenges. In 2019, the Georgia Supreme Court struck down a law that required lifetime ankle monitoring of high-risk sex offenders. And as far as ID cards, which disclose sex offender status, critics in other states have called them a modern-day scarlet letter. Still, CBS 46 Investigates found at least 8 states that have such cards.
I'm going to vote for victims.
The family has also received support from State Representative Misha Maynor and Atlanta Councilwoman Keisha Waits.
I am very sensitive to an individual's privacy. I understand that. However, when it comes to a level 3 and only a level 3 offender, I think the dynamics are different. I think it's about the greater public good. And I think in this particular case, I think had we had something like that in place, we could have tracked this individual, we could have monitored him, and perhaps saved her life.
A legislative lifeline that could provide protection for years to come.
It will be a part of her legacy.
A legacy
Murals are nice, but
the family hopes
I think if less tragedies happen,
will go beyond the many scribed sentiments and into Georgia state law.
that'd be the goal.
Yeah, so it's so rewarding to watch that, especially that last line where he says, you know, the goal is for this to get to state law. And here we are about a year later, and Miriam's Law just passed both the Senate and the House, so now it just has to get a signature from the governor to become state law. So, you know, that's really exciting to just watch the progress from where we started to where we are. But I do want to mention a lot has changed in Miriam's Law, so it's not exactly what the brother there was talking about. So at first they wanted the ankle monitor restrictions and they wanted that ID requirement where they would be able to put some kind of a symbol on the ID to identify a registered sex offender. As this bill gained traction and they found support through various legislators, the ID part kind of fell off. And that was because it was controversial, and I guess in other states they have tried this and it didn't last, or there were some issues. So Miriam's Law became just the electronic ankle monitors. Also, I want to mention those lawmakers that you saw there did not end up, or Representative Misha Maynor, who you saw there, did not end up being a sponsor on this. The sponsor ended up being Representative Stephen Sains in the House, and then Senator Albers over in the Senate. And it did change, so how the last version of the bill, again, like I was mentioning before, these bills get amended as they move through various committees. And the last version is that if somebody who has a prior conviction of a sex offense gets out of prison, they will be required to wear an electronic ankle monitor until they are leveled. That's one part of it, because again, in Miriam's case, DeMarcus Brinkley was never leveled. So if he would have had that ankle monitor on, perhaps police would have been able to track him. The other part of it is that level 1 will not have to get ankle monitors. This is really for the most dangerous sexual predators that will have to wear these ankle monitors for the duration of their sentence, unless the Department of Community Supervision gives the okay that this person can have their ankle monitor taken off. So that is the latest version of the bill. That is what passed the Senate on Monday night.
Yeah, and so, like you said, now it's this bill has been passed by both chambers, right? Mm-hmm. And it's up for consideration by Governor Kemp at this time.
Yeah.
What is the outlook? I mean, do you think it's actually he'll sign?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This bill has gotten so much momentum, and it was really nice, I have to say. I was in the Senate chambers with the family, watching from the gallery while Senator Albers, gave his spiel about the bill before everyone voted, and he said, I want everyone to look up at the family and the friends who made this happen, who've been advocating for this for so long. And it ended up being not a unanimous vote, but I think only one person voted no out of the whole Senate. So majority of lawmakers approving this bill. And it was also just such a nice moment. Miriam's best friend, Irene, who I've also gotten really close with over this last year, began crying and was just so happy she could barely talk. And then Miriam's brother, Ali, who you heard from in the piece from last year, said he felt like they were finally crossing the finish line. It's just been such a tough journey. But, it was really nice. And from what he was saying, too, he can't bring his sister back, but perhaps they can prevent something like this from happening to someone else. And that's really the goal and why they did this in the first place. So it was a really nice moment for the family and for the friends.
I'm sure. And how did they feel about kind of it wasn't initially exactly how it isn't in the form that they initially proposed.
Right. So at first they were disappointed, but I think kind of like us reporters, like as we watch again how that sausage is made in the Capitol and we see how these bills get through, almost no bill goes in and comes out the same way. There's always going to be amendments. There's always going to be compromises along the way. And I think as the family has gotten familiar with the General Assembly as well, they've come to see that as well. And I think they're just really excited that any version of this bill is now making its way through. So overall, they're really excited about it. And I think, Ali was even mentioning maybe the next step is trying to bring this to a federal level and getting these types of ankle monitor restrictions, doing this on a federal level instead of just focusing on the state of Georgia. So, they've gotten into advocacy now, and I think they want to keep going, and it's kind of their way to continue honoring her legacy.
It's wonderful that they've overcome this kind of tragedy by trying to, affect positive change for other people and save other people this pain. What about you talked about the potential of a federal law that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think that would be a lot more challenging, but it's just like, the next step in a lot of these things. I think when it comes down to it, this type of a bill is all about public safety, and this will make our community a safer place. Hopefully most people won't be touched by a crime so tragic as this. But if they are, or if they know someone who is, knowing that these types of restrictions are in place, just kind of give you a little peace of mind that, something like this won't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about, and forgive me if I don't want to ask you about something that is really not, your focus of your research, but what about in other surrounding states? Has there been any talk about similar laws in other states? Because like you said, it can be challenging on the federal level, but maybe state by state?
So I haven't really focused on neighboring states. We did look into that with the license part of this, and we could only find a handful of states who did anything like that with the symbols on the licenses. But as far as the restrictions on the sex offenders, I didn't find anything specific, but that is definitely something we could look into. And, if not, maybe then Georgia is leading the way in something for other states to follow suit in terms of public safety.
Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe Georgia is leading the way on this. Like you said, because of the hard work of this family and, frankly, your own investigative work in uncovering this issue. So, yeah, we've still got a little bit of time here.
Sure.
So I want to ask you, what else do you think I know when we're doing television coverage, it's so restrictive in terms of the
Right.
time that we have allotted. What else do you want viewers to know about this story?
I would say, I always go back to telling viewers it's so important to send us your ideas and, your story tips, and we really do follow up on all of that because so many of these stories come from a tip or a viewer just saying, hey, isn't this weird? Like, I can't even explain like how many of my stories begin that way. Or from sources saying, you should check into something. So I would encourage viewers to reach out to us. They can do that right at atlantanewsfirst.com. If they go to the Investigates tab, we have a jot form they can fill out to contact us. They can also email me directly. I'm at rachel.polanski@wamf.com. Also on all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok these days. So yes, send us story ideas. We will look into all of them. And sometimes it becomes something even greater than what we started with. And sometimes it can even lead to a state law change. I think Miriam's Law is such a great example of the advocacy piece of this. This family did not stop advocating and pushing for policy change. And I think a lot of people could learn from that. If they really want to see change at the Capitol, you have to go to the Capitol and you have to talk to lawmakers and you have to push for whatever it is you want to see changed.